Okay, so we'll get started. This is, my name is Joe Wax. I am the program development specialist, I guess my title is, here at Hudson County Office of Cultural and Heritage Affairs / Tourism Development. And this is the webinar for the Fiscal Year 2020 Hudson County History Partnership Program. I thought what we do is we go through the guidelines, which anybody who's on this call probably has been able to see because they were attached to the numerous emails that I've sent out so far. And then we would go through just take a look at the application and then answer any questions that you guys might have. So I put these are the guidelines are up on the screen. I'm just going to excuse myself for one moment and blow my nose. I think it's cold season. All right, can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, perfect.
All right, awesome. So we're going to go through we'll start with the guidelines. If you want to if you have questions that are pertinent to the section we're going through, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, you can save them till the end. So the application is live. You can see here the two different places you can find it. It's online if you're familiar with our applications. If you've done the local arts program grant before, or the history grant. And officially, it's called the Hudson County History Partnership Program, or HCHPP. Sometimes we call it CHIP. But if you've applied with us before, then you're familiar with the application. It's all online, so everything you do will be online. There's nothing. The only thing that you'll have to send in is your certification page, and we'll get to that when we get to it. So without further ado, the application is live. The deadline for applications is Monday, November 18th, 2019 at 5 p.m., and there are no exceptions to that. So the application will actually shut off at the time. So if you try to submit after that time, you won't be able to. And like I just talked about, the certification page, which you'll find in the application, you'll either have to drop it off here to the office before 5 p.m. or by 5 p.m. on the Monday, November 18th, or have it postmarked before that day or on that day. That's the story with that. So let's go talk about. Let's just go through the. Let's just go through the introduction. This is like I said, it's the Fiscal Year 2020 Hudson County History Partnership Program. The funding for this program is made through the New Jersey Historical Commission and the Hudson County Board of Freeholders and County Executive Thomas A. DeGise. So just so you know, we get money from the state, from the Historical Commission for this grant. Most other counties who do this program do not get funding from their freeholders or their county exec if they have one for this program. So I guess I'm giving a little giving kudos to our freeholders and our county executive who put their money where their mouth is. This is an important program. It's a relatively new program. This is only the fourth year. We've been doing this program like LAP, the local arts program, which many of you are familiar with. We've been doing that for over 25 years, and actually the freeholders and the county exec have appropriated funds for that as well. But it's a good thing. So it augments the funds we get from the state, which is not a hell of a lot of money, to be honest with you. So the guidelines in the application describe how grant funds can be used for specific programming by Hudson County-based organizations, for nonprofit history-based organizations, arts organizations that offer historical programming, units of local government, including libraries and schools, and there's a couple other organizations that can apply. So here are the goals and objectives of the program: to broaden, deepen, and diversify the audience for history in Hudson County, strengthen and further develop existing history organizations and programs in Hudson County, initiating new programming on the history of Hudson County and its 12 municipalities, improving management and interpretation of historic sites and historical collections in Hudson County, expanding public understanding and awareness of historical resources in Hudson County, increasing public and organizational participation in historical programs and activities in Hudson County, increasing accessibility of historical resources to diverse communities, and encourage the exploration of understudied and multicultural aspects of history in Hudson County, increasing the body and quality of information on Hudson County's history available to the public, and preserving materials for study or preservation of Hudson County history. It's pretty broad. And as you'll see, there's actually two different types of grants that are available this year, or in the past, there's only been one type of grant available, but we'll get to that shortly. The application webinar is going on right now, so we don't need to go through that. Excuse me for a moment, I just had a sip of water. All right, so who may apply, or what kind of organizations may apply? First of all, this makes sense. The Hudson County-based nonprofit history-related organizations that have collections or programming related to the history of Hudson County or the history of any of its 12 municipalities. So it's a history organization that does history programming. If you're one of those organizations, you have to be incorporated in the state of New Jersey. You have to be a 501c3 nonprofit, and you have to have been in existence for at least 1 year as of January 1, 2019. In the past, we've allowed organizations who that are in the process of applying for their 501c3 status but have not received it yet. We found that it's problematic for us and problematic for our treasurer and our treasury department here in the county. So unfortunately, if you're not a 501c3, you're not going to be able to apply for this grant at this time until you get your 501c3 status. Okay, so that's A, is history-based organizations. The second type of organization that can apply is a unit of government in Hudson County. That includes schools, libraries, colleges, and universities. Of course, it's municipalities as well. And that is those type of entities that provide local history programming services or activities pertaining to Hudson County or any of its municipalities, and that these programs are offered to the general public. So you can't just be offering programming to your members or to a select group of people. It has to be open to the public. Same thing for A. For history-based organizations, have to be offered to the public. Agencies of federal or state government are not eligible for these grants. What the hell is this? Why is this doing this? Wow, that is really weird. Hold on a second. Wow, that's really weird. Bear with me for 1 second, everybody. My apologies. What can you guys see right now? Can someone tell me what you can see?
I can only see circles with people who are in the conference.
Okay, thanks. All right, you should be good now. Alrighty, we're back. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. Okay. The third type of organization that can apply so far we got public entities like municipalities, we got history-based organizations, and now Hudson County-based nonprofit arts organizations can apply, but those arts organizations, nonprofit arts organizations can apply when they when they present local artistic history programming, such as creative history-based happenings, historical-based murals, visual arts exhibits, musical arrangements, or performances on historical subjects inside or outside of theater to be considered for funding if at least 20% of the cost of the grant is for consultation with a qualified historian on the subject matter of the project. So I'm sure we have people on this call who have applied or receiving one of our CHIP grants. And so if you're an arts organization, obviously it's got to be for programming that is history related, and 20% of your grant has to be used for consultation with a qualified historian. Just like the other organizations, you have to be a 501c3, and you have to be incorporated in New Jersey, and you have to have been in existence for at least 1 full year. The last type of organization is a business-based organization, such as a Chamber of Commerce or Economic Development Corporation. We have never had any of those apply for it, but they're more than welcome to. And those type of organizations, same deal, have to present local history programming. They have to be incorporated in the state of New Jersey and defined as a nonprofit under 501c3. I think that's pretty straightforward. So you basically have four types of organizations that can apply. So hey, can I ask a favor? Can you guys can you mute yourselves, and then if you have a question or if I ask a question, you can unmute yourself, because there's like a lot of noise on the line. It'll be better for everybody. So please mute yourselves. Who may not apply? Agencies of the federal or state government cannot apply. Individuals, organizations who have, I don't know why it says individuals, but organizations who have received a grant and have failed to submit a final report cannot apply. Organizations that are funded by the New Jersey Historical Commission cannot apply. Organizations that do not practice policies of equal access and non-discrimination cannot apply. Organizations that received grants in the previous year but have failed to complete their programming. Can you put yourself on mute, please? Whoever that is, it's making a lot of noise. Organizations that have not finished their project in the previous year cannot apply. All that's pretty common sense. Important points. Grant recipients must comply with all applicable state and federal laws and maintain good standing with all required state and federal filings. Applicants must show that grant funds will permit them to expand, enhance, or introduce Hudson County and or locally history programs and services. Organizations may not use grant monies as a means to reduce their own expenditures on history programs or services by using these funds as replacement funds. And any proposed changes to the project and approved application must be first submitted in writing to us, to our office. So it happens occasionally. I think we had a grantee this past year who applied for a grant. They received it. They were successful. They received the grant, and then the city of Jersey City wound up funding the same exact project for the same exact reason, and so the organization, obviously they didn't need to do that project anymore. They sent us a letter. They told us about it. They sent us a letter telling us what they were going to do instead of that, and we approved it, and everyone lived happily ever after. So it's important to know. There is a credit requirement that you need to put on all your printed and publicity materials. I'm not going to read it, but it's in there, and it will be in your contract as well. If you get a grant. Information informing us about your programming. It's really important that you send us information about your program and that we're funding, so that we can include it in our various calendars, newsletters, emails, et cetera, et cetera. It kind of makes sense. Like, I think you would want to do that anyway, but believe it or not, some people don't. So, yes, please tell us. You're required to tell us about your programming that we're funding. Is everyone on mute? Because there's still a lot of background noise. So if you haven't muted yourself, please mute yourself. There's an appeals process. An appeal decision by the peer review panel will be entertained only if applicant can specifically demonstrate that the application was misinterpreted or misunderstood during the evaluation process. The amount of an award will not be grounds for an appeal, and the appeal may be made only on the basis of the information contained in the initial application. Our staff will clarify the appeals procedure for any applicant requiring further information. So I guess it's a good time to talk about. So all the applications are after the deadline. The application deadline is over. We have a peer review panel that meets. These are people who are experts in history, historic programming, et cetera. And so we assemble them, and they make the decisions on the how much, if any amount you'll be receiving for FY20 history grant. So if you received a LAP grant in the past, you know that it's the same procedure. We have a peer review panel made up of different artistic disciplines, people from different artistic disciplines who make the decisions. So our staff doesn't make the decisions on who gets what. We just are there to facilitate the process. All right. Guidelines. This is important. Priorities for funding. Special consideration will be given to proposals of quality, innovation, and merit that address the following priority issues: outreach to underserved communities, like senior citizens, physically challenged folks, developmentally challenged individuals, culturally diverse, economically disadvantaged. Promotion of history in municipalities in northern and western Hudson County. The point there being that we have plenty of, and it's not prejudicial against Jersey City in particular, or Hoboken, but we get a lot of applications from Jersey City. We love it when we get applications from other parts of the county. So if you're from Guttenberg or Harrison or Bayonne or Kearney or wherever, Union City, Weehawken, I'm not gonna keep naming them all, but it's great. So we're not penalizing people from Jersey City or Hoboken or anywhere, but it's great if we really like to spread the love. Promoting the appreciation of history and historical programming in Hudson County, expanding the influence of Hudson County history to a broader sphere. So those are all like I said, special consideration will be given to your application. Okay, so I alluded to this before. There's two categories, the grant categories. There's two different categories. In the past, and if you've been a LAP recipient or applicant, you know that there's a few different categories there. In the past, we only were offering program support grants, so that was for specific programming. the state has asked us, the State Historical Commission has asked us to provide to allow people to apply for general operating support grants. So there's two types of grants, and we'll go over what they are in a second. But so there's two types: program support, also known as PS, and general operating support, also known as GOS. And so you can only apply for one type of grant in a year, in a given year. So if you're applying for a program support grant, you can apply for a GOS grant. If you're applying for a GOS grant, you can apply for a program support grant. So let's go through. Program support is the first type. What is programming? What is program support? Program support is we offer matching grants to Hudson County organizations to support specific projects related to history of Hudson County or any of its 12 municipalities. So this is for specific programming. So if you want to do a program on, like, if you want to do, like, for an arts organization, if you want to do a play on a specific era in history in Hudson County, this is what you would apply for. This is for specific programming. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're a history organization, you want to do a lecture series, that's specific programming. That's what this grant is for. Is there a match the maximum program support grant request is $7,000. So you can get, the max you can get for this type of grant is $7,000. There's a 1-to-1 match required. So 100% of the grant amount must be matched by grantee organizations, but don't despair. It doesn't have to be in cash. It can be any combination of cash or in-kind contributions. So if you're awarded $6,000, you would have to match the grant with $6,000 of either cash and or any combination thereof of cash and in-kind contributions. In-kind contributions are contributions are something that you would have to pay for normally, but you're getting for free. So let's say you're a artistic arts organization and you're putting on that play that I was just talking about, and someone's letting you use their theater for free or at a reduced cost, that is in kind. If you have an accountant that does your books, and they're not charging you or they're charging you less, that's in kind. So like having someone volunteer on a Saturday, that's not an in-kind contribution. If someone's providing, so if someone's providing something that you would have to pay for normally, that is an in-kind contribution. This is important. The total cost of a project often exceeds the grant amount. Projects may be overmatched with additional cash and or in-kind donations from the grantee organization. Applicants should determine the actual cost of the project before deciding on the amount of the grant request, which ensures that your organization can meet the cash requirements. Important to know. What kind of programs can be funded with a PS grant, program support grant? I will run through these all. And if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. What kind of projects can be funded? Presentations and interpretation of public information about county and local history, such as brochures describing the organization's collection, programs, or services. Public programs such as lectures, exhibitions, conferences, symposia, and workshops. Artistic history programming such as creative history-based happenings, historically based murals, visual arts exhibits, musical arrangements, or performances on historical subjects inside or outside the theater. It can be considered funding at least 20% of the cost is covered by of the grant is for consultation with a qualified historian on the subject matter of the project. So we went over that. So if you're an arts organization and you are doing a play, you need to you need to employ the services of a historian so that you can ensure that the play is historically accurate. Excuse me. This program, this type of programming, the artistic history program we're talking about, must educate or bring public awareness to persons, places, or events in the history of Hudson County or any of its 12 municipalities. Original research and writing, bibliographical essays, historiographies, research in connection with historic preservation projects, research that analyzes the field of Hudson County and its municipalities' history, such as needs for long-range planning, resource management, or heritage tourism, oral history projects, audio, video, or monographs, editorial work, including the updating of important works on Hudson County and its 12 municipalities, publications, film or video treatment, scripts or production. We've had this, just to go off for a second, we've had several, mostly municipalities do documentaries on history of their town or about important historical figures in their town. They're always pretty cool. Development or enhancement of websites specifically deal with history of Hudson County or in its municipalities. Feasibility studies or planning for large-scale projects concerning Hudson County and municipalities' history. So that's kind of like seed money. So if it's a bigger project and you're using our grant for planning, that's permissible. Excuse me, I'm very sorry. Surveys of historical resources, Hudson County or its municipalities. Such a survey is a planning tool to identify, record, and evaluate historical assets that would be form the foundation of a comprehensive and proactive historic preservation program. Educational components of ceremonies, reenactments, commemorations, or anniversary of historical events. But the funds cannot be used for receptions, refreshments, let me see, theatrical performance, concerts, citations, and/or proclamations, plaques, equipment rental that are associated with such events. Microfilming and the production of finding aids to collections. Genealogical projects resulting in research tools that are publicly accessible for use of the wider historical community. Production of CD-ROMs and other digital projects that feature original content relating to the history of Hudson County or its municipalities. Videotaping or audio taping of public programming or oral history projects is permitted if transcripts, YouTube links, free downloads, and or viewing of or listening are available or publicly accessible. Give me 1 second here. Okay, what kind of expenses are covered? And this kind of goes with what I just detailed for you, but microfilming, travel expenses are limited to with the following limits: automobile travel, 31 cents per mile, so you can't fly around the country on one of these grants. Archival or research library user fees, oral history tape transcription, wages or stipends for project personnel such as conservators, curators, educational consultants, and researchers. You can pay a speaker's honorarium of one of these grants with the provisos that are listed below. Keynote speaker up to $750, main speaker up to $500, chairperson or moderator up to $150, and a panelist $125. Supplies to be used in the project, such as audio tapes, videotapes, storage materials, office supplies, and materials for educational projects. You can use that. You can use that this grant for that. Materials for fabricating and installing exhibitions. Payment of fees for touring exhibitions or the costs related to exhibitions loaned out to another entity. Archival folders, boxes, and other materials for conservation of historical materials such as manuscripts, books, costumes, and photographs. Typesetting, printing, and binding. photography and photocopying, production of promotional and or advertising materials. Okay, so all those things, those are all things you can pay for with a program support grant. Any questions on that? You have any hypotheticals or any questions on that? Feel free to ask me right now. Otherwise, you can ask me at the end. Okay, so that's program support. Now that for fiscal year 2020, we are offering a general operating support grant. These grants are only history-related organizations can apply for a general operating support grant. So if you're an arts organization or a school or a chamber of commerce, et cetera, business organization, you cannot apply for this type of grant. Only history-related organizations may apply for a GOS grant, as you can see right there in big writing. The Hudson County History Partnership Program awards competitive matching grants to support Hudson County history-related organizations that work to promote the history of Hudson County or any of its 12 municipalities. The purpose of the GOS grant is to provide operating and administrative funding needed to sustain Hudson County history-related organizations into the future. The maximum amount for a general operating support grant is $9,000. Just like the program support grant is a one-to-one match required, and that can same as with the program support grants. It's a one-to-one match with any combination of cash and or in-kind contributions. So I explained that earlier. What that means, GOS grants can be used to support history-related organizations' general operating and programming costs. Up to 15% of the grant can be used for administrative costs. Who can apply for a GOS grant? Like I just said, history-related, Hudson County-based nonprofit history-related organizations that offer the history of programming, programming on the history of Hudson County or any of its municipalities. They're incorporated in the state of New Jersey. Are defined as nonprofits under 501c3 of the IRS code and have been existing for at least 1 year as of January 1, 2019. Let's see here. What is ineligible under this type of grant, under the GOS grants? Administrative salaries, except for GOS applicants, as previously defined, cannot be funded with a HCHPP grant. So that means that's referring back to this. 15% of grant may be used towards administrative costs. So you cannot use a grant to pay. You cannot use like $9,000 of the grant to pay for an administrator or someone in your organization. Airline and travel and hotel expenses cannot be funded. This is for both types of both categories, both program support and general operating support. Airline travel and hotel expenses cannot be funded with the history grant. They cannot be used to purchase equipment. Grants cannot be used to offset institutional or organizational budget deficits. Grants cannot be used as collateral to obtain loans. Grants cannot be used as funds to lend to other organizations. Projects that do not relate to the history of Hudson County, New Jersey, or any of its municipalities cannot be funded with this grant. Project work that is completed before the submission of the application cannot be funded with one of these grants. So basically, if you're in the middle of a program and you want to fund it with one of our grants, you cannot do that. Like the funds have to be used for something that you're applying specifically for this. Hope that makes sense. Restoration or preservation of structures cannot be funded with these grants. Purchase of collections, furniture, costumes, artifacts cannot be funded with these grants. Construction, restoration, preservation of gravestones, statuary plaques, historic property, and other such items cannot be funded. Acquisition of works of art, antiques, ephemera cannot be funded. Projects of federal and state government agencies cannot be funded with one of these grants. Conservation of materials owned by the federal government, no. Conservation of collections of unidentified photographs cannot be funded with a HCHPP grant. Projects were not accessible to the general public, cannot be funded. Publication of coloring books, cookbooks, and calendars cannot be funded. Genealogical projects of specific families cannot be funded unless applicants can demonstrate that the usefulness of the project to the understanding of Hudson County. Unless you can show that it's relevant to the general public, you can't fund a genealogy of a specific family. Like, so you can't, if you're the Smith family and you think it'd be really cool to do a genealogical study of your family, you cannot fund it with this grant unless it has some greater meaning to the people of Hudson County. Videotaping or audio taping of public programs or oral history interviews without the production of transcripts to make it accessible to the public cannot be funded with a CHIP grant. Capital projects and improvements, such as renovation or construction, cannot be funded with a CHIP grant. Purchase of books or prepackaged instructional materials cannot be purchased. Trophies, prizes, and scholarships cannot be funded with a CHIP grant. Hospitality, food, and beverage cannot be funded. Cannot be used. CHIP grants cannot be used to pay for support fundraising events for recipient organizations or as a donation to other organizations. No field trips can be funded with a CHIP grant. Projects that are the curricular or extracurricular activities of a school cannot be funded with a grant. And that's because it's not if it's not open to the general public, then it cannot be funded with a grant. So if it's just for a school and it's just for like the use of the school and the students in the school, that's a no-no. Programs whose sole emphasis is to motivate religious, sectarian, social welfare, health, education cannot be funded with a CHIP grant. I skipped over this one. Presenting performances, exhibits, and production outside Hudson County obviously cannot be funded with one of these grants, and CHIP grants cannot be used for personal gain in any manner. Any questions about that before we move on? This is priorities for funding for both general operating support and program support. We went through that already. I just put it again here because it's important. All right, so now we're going to go through. We're going to go through the actual application, but I actually went through in these guidelines went through what we're looking for in the application, which I think will be helpful to you. So why don't we do this? We'll look at the application, then we'll come back and forth to the guidelines. So let me get the application itself up. Give me a second. Okay, 1 second. One second here. Okay. Alrighty. Let me get this up. Okay. We got the application up. All right. So we will. There we go. this is what it will look like to you. So there's an introduction. You can hide and expand that. So there's a pre-application. There's a program summary. So this just asks you for your basic information, your contact information, name of your organization, your mailing address, et cetera, et cetera. Once you complete that, then there's the pre-application. And it just asks you a bunch of questions to see if you're qualified. So it basically goes back to what I just talked about in the guidelines. You have to be in existence 1 full year as of January 1, 2019, incorporated in the state of New Jersey, and be approved as a 501c3 organization. So if you answer no to any of those, it'll take you to a screen. It'll tell you that you can't apply. If you answer yes to those questions, it'll continue on the application. So once you're done with this is a little bit different for this year. We just ask up front for your New Jersey incorporation papers, your 501c3 certification from the IRS, and a copy of your W-9. So in order to continue on the application, you're going to have to upload those 3 things. They're all important, and it's a real pain in the butt if I have to wind up chasing you down for those later. So you'll be asked to attach them right here, and then we can move on to the application. The application, it asks you what type of applicant you are. So it'll branch off. So if you are a history-based nonprofit, you'll be able to it'll branch you off. You'll be able to apply for either the program support grant or the general operating support grant, as we discussed. If you're any of these, a unit of government, a Hudson County-based arts organization, or Hudson County-based business organization, if you check any of those, it'll just bring you to the part of the application that deals with program support, because that's the only type of grant you'll be able to apply for. So then it asks you the focus of your organization, pretty self-explanatory, and then it'll ask you what type of grant you're applying for. Like I said, if you're an arts organization or a business organization or a government, you'll only be able to apply for this, the program support. If you are a history organization, you can apply for either both types of grants. I'm sorry. So if you see here, like it branches, it'll change the question. So if you're a program support, please, there's a purpose question. Please ask what project, program, or initiative that FY20 CHIP programming project support will fund. The statement should include dates, locations, and any other pertinent information about what the grant will specifically fund in the program. Also explain what the benefit to the general public and or underserved audience and or how the program promotes growth in history-related organizations, or historical programming in Hudson County. And you'll have 6,000 characters for that. That's a lot. A single space page is approximately 3,000 characters. So you'll have 6,000 characters for this. By no means do you have to use all 6,000 characters or whatever the limit is for these questions. There's something to be said for brevity. Be complete but as brief as possible. So the narrative. In the space below, please provide your narrative supporting your organization's FY20 program support grant request. So let's go back to the guidelines, and we'll talk about what the guidelines say about what they say about that. Let me see. Application window. There we go. Okay. So purpose. There, we just talked about that question. The question asks you to describe what project, program, or initiative that the program support grant is funding. Statement should include dates. I already said this. Locations. Any other pertinent information about what the grant will specifically fund in the program. You should also explain what the benefit will be to either general public and/or underserved audience. Also explain what the benefit will be to either the general public and/or underserved audience, or how the project promotes growth of history, history-related organizations, or historical program in Hudson County. So we talked about that. So the narrative, that's like really the narrative is, and I just showed you where that goes. The limit is 7,500 characters, including spaces, so that gives you plenty of opportunity to discuss it. So what is the program support narrative? The program support narrative is the heart of your application. You must assume that the reader knows nothing about the project or the topic covered. Nevertheless, please be as succinct as possible. When writing the narrative, please have on hand the evaluation criteria detailed below, against which the application will be measured. So these are the things you have to. These are the things you need to cover, and I recommend that you use. You can use section headings. Like I said, section headings based on the lettered items below recommended. So here are the things you need to cover in your narrative. Begin the narrative with a brief overview of your organization and history-related activities it is conducted, if applicable. What is the project? Why is it worth doing? Why is it worth funding? Tell how it relates to your organization's mission. State how the goals and objectives of your project. Is it a new or ongoing programming? How was the project selected? Discuss the project planning process, including how you determine the interests and needs of the community, or if hiring a consultant, your organizational needs. Who is involved with the project? Please provide the name of history-related qualifications or credentials of persons responsible for overseeing the project. If it's a committee, name its members and discuss its credentials. Give the name and relevant experience of professionals hired through the grant. Provide a clear statement of responsibilities of each. Describe how you selected the professionals. There will be an opportunity to attach resumes and other related documents in the application. D, where and when will the project take place? How many events will take place? Who will benefit from the project? How will they benefit? Describe the demographics of your community and the participants and audience for this project. Will your project promote history with an underserved audience? How will it promote broadening and diversifying the audience for history of Hudson County or its municipalities? Estimate the numbers of individuals directly served by your project. Is this project in addition to your usual public hours? Please explain. E, how will you advertise and promote the project? Discuss your publicity plan. List the specific media you will use. Describe your plan to expand diversity in audience members and membership. F, what is your timeline of the project? Include with support material a complete timeline in monthly increments beginning with the grant approval through the conclusion of the project. How you evaluate the success, benefits, or failures of your project. Illustrate how your organization's programs address our priorities for funding, which are detailed twice above. Does your program promote the value of historic education and raise public awareness of historical resources? Please give examples. So that is the narrative. So there's a lot there, but it's manageable, and as you can see, it's broken down by letter. And like I said, we recommend that you break down your narrative in that form. So the next question is about accessibility. So I'm going to go back to the application now. Let me go back here. Give me a second. All right. Okay, narrative. Accessibility. Describe in detail your organization's efforts to make its programming open and accessible to all people. Explain how your organization's programming will be made accessible to allow for greater participation by special needs audiences or visitors. Specifically address your organization's use of descriptive listening devices or sign language interpretation, Braille interpretive signage, special tactile exhibits, or any other methodologies. If you are familiar with our LAP, our Local Arts Program grant, you know that we require you to, the state actually requires you to file a Americans with Disabilities Act plan with us for your grant. You're not required to do so with the CHIP grant, but nonetheless, accessibility is important. That's why we have a question about it. So we don't require you to file a plan with us, but we do ask you to discuss accessibility. So let's go back. I'm going to go back to the guidelines now, and we'll just talk about that for a second. Let's see. Okay. All right, accessibility. Like I said, you're not required to file a a formal Americans with Disabilities Act plan. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water for a second. My apologies. Sorry about that. It is cold and flu season. You're not required to file a formal Americans with Disability Act plan for this grant. Nonetheless, our office believes that it is essential that your program be accessible to all people. This question you're asked to describe in detail your organization's efforts to make its programming available to all individuals. You should explain how your organization's programming will be made accessible to allow for greater participation by special needs audiences or visitors. Specifically address your organization's use of, like I said, descriptive listening devices, sign language interpretation, Braille interpretive signage, special tactile exhibits, or any other methodologies. And you have 4,000 characters for that. So that is the question about accessibility. The next question is the budget narrative. If you are familiar with this grant or with LAP, you know that there is a budget narrative section. I'll just go back to the application for a second. Okay. Budget narrative. In this space provided below, in paragraph form, please provide a summary of your income and expenses related to the project for which you are seeking a program support grant. You should discuss the basis of your budget items in detail. Note that donated services, also known as in-kind services, are permitted for inclusion in your budget. If you have items that would be classified as other in the budget summary, you should detail them in your budget narrative. Also note that you'll be required to detail your line items on the subsequent page of this application. That's referring to the actual budget. It is advisable to keep your budget on hand when filling out your budget narrative. Please be advised that both the narrative and the budget line item sections are required for consideration. Please consult the narrative guideline, budget narrative guidelines on page 15 of the guidelines, which we'll do in a second. I'm going to go back to the I'll go back to the guidelines. Okay. Budget narrative. This is your financial narrative. The narrative should coincide with the budget portion of the application that you'll fill out. How much will the project cost? How did you determine the costs shown on major line items of your budget? Be sure your projected expenses are based on sound research. Why are these funds needed? How will you spend the funds? Be very specific. For materials, hold on one second. Just give me 1 second here. Wait, I lost you. Okay. Where are we? 15. Sorry about that. There we go. There we go. Why are the funds needed? How will you pay? How will you spend the funds? I'm sorry I already said that. Be very specific. For example, tell how you projected costs of printing, postage, supplies, and materials, and any other paid advertising. What are your major projected sources of income? Note that donated services or in-kind services are permitted for inclusion in your budget. It is advisable, like I said, to keep the budget on hand when filling out this portion, and both the budget narrative and the line item sections are required. So don't do the budget and not do the budget narrative. Don't do the narrative, the budget narrative, and not do the budget. You got to do both. Then the program support budget. So, and we'll go check that out in a second. In filling out your budget, please remember that earned income, i.e. ticket sales, cash donations, etc., plus in-kind income, free rent, donated costumes, etc., plus the grant amount you're asking for should equal the cost of your project. For example, if your project costs $20,000, you receive a $7,000 grant. Then you have a difference of $13,000, which you need to make up with any combination of earned income and in-kind income. So, yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Program support applicants, you only need to complete the program support budget, not the general. You don't have to do the general operating support budget. The reason we say that is because in Zoom Grants, which is the grant portal that I've been showing you, if you're applying for a program support grant, the general operating support grant will still show up, but you don't have to fill it out. It's just one of those glitchy things with this app, with Zoom Grants. It's a great program, but there are a few little glitches with it, and so unfortunately, you can't branch off the budget. So you'll see both budgets there. You do not have to fill out, if you're a program support applicant, you do not have to fill out the general operating support budget. So let's just go quickly back to the application. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Okay. We're back to the application. That's the budget narrative. So here's the budget. So it runs through all these line items. I'm not going to read through all these, but you actually, you fill in, you fill everything in. In order to make everything add up, you come up here and you hit refresh page. So I guess what I'm going to do also is I'm just going to remind you of this. Nope, not there. Yeah, all right. Well, your budget, here's the directions for the budget. Your budget should be reflective of detail in the budget narrative and vice versa. Calculations such as subtotals and grand totals require a page refresh to update. Please enter your numbers in the fields, then reload the page using the fresh page button at the top right of the page. The new updated calculations will be presented once the page reloads. Please note that all fields must be filled in irrespective of whether you have a line item in your budget. If there's a line item below that is not representing your actual budget, just enter 0. That's that. So then we have the actual budget line items. I'm not going to go through them all, but I would just tell you that there is like I said, there's an other category. Another one of the slightly annoying things with Zoom Grants is that unfortunately you can't enter what other is here. So if you have other expenses, just detail them in the budget narrative. So first is your projected expenses. That's your personnel expenses, your administrative materials and supplies, your facilities, your marketing and publicity, your program expenses. And then so then that all adds up to your projected expenses. Then the next section is your projected earned income. earned income, like I said, is cash. So it's like admissions, subscriptions, sponsorships, or other cash contributions, fundraising. That is cash is earned income. So you fill in your projected earned income. And then part 3 is your projected in-kind income. Like I said, in-kind is things that are donated that you would have to pay for otherwise. So it has all kinds of in-kind things here. Then then it'll give you your total for in-kind. So then you're adding up your projected earned income, your projected in-kind income, and then how much is your request, and the number, like I said, at the end, total income minus expenses, it should be 0. It should all figure out, because basically it should all balance out, because your costs, your expenses and your costs should equal out. So at the end, you should be left with a 0. This is the general operating support budget. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's just go back to the guidelines now. Any questions so far? I hope I'm keeping you. I know this is a little dry, but hopefully I think it'll be helpful for you. Let's go back to the guidelines. Okay. All right, so that was program support. Then we have general operating support. And like I said, it's only history related organizations can apply for this. The purpose, and we'll go back to the application. The purpose, we'll go back to the purpose. General operating support purpose. The question asks you to detail why FY20 general operating support funding is needed at this stage in development of your organization's growth. In addition, you should describe the benefit to the general public and/or an underserved audience by your organization's continued presence and growth in Hudson County and New Jersey. So just I think you can probably see the theme just from the beginning of this. For the general operating support grant, we're asking you, it's more general information about your organization, and as you'll see from the budget, you're not going to be detailing a specific program, and you're going to actually be detailing the finances of your organization. We'll go. I'll just read about the narrative, and then we'll go back to the application. Actually, let's go to the application. Let's just go back to the application. Okay. Let's go back to the application. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. So when you do the pre-application, if you're applying for general operating support, it will branch off. So let's say we're a nonprofit organization. Let's say we're applying for general operating support. So the purpose is there, the narrative, and the space below, please provide your narrative supporting your organization's FY20 general operating support grant. Please refer to the general operating support narrative guidelines on page 16 and 17 of the guidelines. So this is the narrative question. Now let's go back. We'll go back to the guidelines. Guidelines. There we go. Okay. All right. The narrative. For general operating support, the general operating support narrative is the heart of your application, just like it is for if you're applying for a program support grant. You must assume that the reader knows nothing about your organization. Nevertheless, please be as succinct as possible. When writing your narrative, please have on hand the evaluation criteria detailed below against which the application will be measured. The narrative can constitute an overview of your organization, including its mission, targeted audience, history, governance, administration, planning, and distinction, i.e. what sets your group apart from others. Section headings based on the lettered items below are recommended. That's the same as if you're applying for a PS grant. And you get 8,000 characters for this, which is a lot. This is what you need to address in your general operating support narrative. Begin your narrative with a brief overview of your organization and the history-related activities it has conducted. Discuss the qualifications of full-time and part-time paid and unpaid personnel. Present an overview of the board of directors or trustees, including longevity of each member, titles, etc. Board retreats and how board members are cultivated and chosen to serve. Explain in detail the process used to develop and choose your organization's programming. And I just say, if you're familiar with LAP and you're familiar with the local with general operating support grant from LAP, then this will look familiar to you because it's based on the same criteria. Explain in detail the process used to develop and choose your organization's programming and who makes the final decisions. Indicate how individuals with special needs are considered for inclusion. State what measurable tools are employed to evaluate your programming and audience participation in all programs. Discuss your organization's long-range plan with goals to be achieved and elaborate on the time frame and current status of your plan. Illustrate how your organization's programs address our priorities for funding, which are detailed above, which we talked about. Tell how the organization measures diversity in its audience and how it develops programming to respond to that diversity. So clearly, you can see this is like a general. It's general operating support. So you're telling about your organization, you're telling, pretty much soup to nuts about your organization. So it's not specific to a project. It's really general to your organization. There's also a accessibility question for general operating support. So it's the same thing. It's the same question. You're not filing a formal ADA plan with us, but you need to tell us how your program is accessible to all. So it's a little different in this. So in this question for GOS, for accessibility, you're asked to describe in detail your organization's efforts to make its programming available to all individuals. Explain how your organization program will be made accessible to allow for greater participation by special needs audiences or visitors. Specifically address your organization's use of descriptive listening devices, sign language interpretation, braille interpretive signage, special tactile exhibits, or any other methodologies. And then for general operating support, there's the budget narrative. I'll show you that. We'll just go over the application for a second. Okay. Go to the application. Budget narrative. So like I said, this is for general operating support. So it's the budget narrative is going to relate to the finances of your organization. So I'll read this. In the space provided below, in paragraph 1, please provide a summary of your income and expenses of your organization. Hence, for general operating support budget narrative, discuss how much it costs to run your organization. You should discuss the basis of your budget items in detail. Note that donated services, also known as in-kind services, are permitted for inclusion on your budget. If you have items that would be classified as other in the budget summary, you should detail them in the budget narrative. Also note that you're required to detail your line items on the budget on the subsequent page of this application. Like I said, it is vital to keep your budget on hand when filling out the budget narrative. Both the budget narrative and the budget line item sections are required for consideration. And please refer to the general operating support budget narrative on guidelines on page 18 of the guidelines. So let's go back to those. Let's go back to those. Okay. So, budget narrative. This is your financial narrative. Yeah, I mean, I basically went through this, but it should coincide with the budget portion of your application. It's an actual accounting of your organization's finances. So for the budget narrative, discuss how much it costs to run your organization. How do you determine the costs shown on the major line items of your budget? Be sure your projected expenses are based on sound research. Why are GOS funds needed? How will you spend the funds? Be very specific. What are your major projected sources of income? Note that donated services or in-kind services are permitted for inclusion in your budget. It is advisable you keep your budget on hand with filling out the line item, and both sections are required. So yeah, so you're trying to give a good thumbnail sketch of your organization's finance in a narrative form for the GOS category. So let's talk about the budget for GOS. Your budget is an actual accounting of your organization's finances, and filling out your budget, you should detail your organization's earned income. We talked about what earned income is, and your in-kind income. We talked about that, what that is. GOS budget is your opportunity to detail your organization's fiscal picture. Like I said before, if you're applying for a GOS grant, you do not need to fill out the program support budget line items. It's either you have to do whatever type of grant you're applying for, PS or GOS, you do that budget. So if you're applying for a PS grant, you do the PS budget. If you're applying for a GOS grant, you do the GOS budget. So we'll just go to the application and show you the budget for the GOS. Okay. Alrighty. That was the budget. So now here's the budget. No, let's go back. See some questions. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so here's the general operating support budget. It's right below the program support budget. I'm sorry that we can't branch these off, but unfortunately they're both there. So you can see this is the general operating support. This is for general operating support applicants only. I say it twice so you get it. So I'm not going to go through each of these lines, but this is you're detailing the finances of your organization. So it's a little more. It is more comprehensive than the program support budget because you're asking for general operating support funds for your organization. That's why you're detailing the finances of your organization. So it is definitely more detailed, but at the same time, you're able to use these finances to run your organization. So you're getting more flexibility. At the same time, we're asking you're asking you to detail it in more. You're asking to put in more detail your budget. So same thing. You have to go to refresh. You have to go to the top of the page and hit refresh. Unfortunately, it's another one of those little annoying glitchy things. So yeah. So your first part is your expenses. So it's all your your personnel expenses. It's your material expenses, facilities expenses, marketing expenses, and then part two is your income. It's your earned income, your in-kind income, and then your and that's it. So that is the application. Let me just see. Let me just go back to the top here. Let's go through the documents that are, so after you do the budget, you'll be brought to this page. Documents to be supplied by applicant. This is so the first one is your organization's mission statement. If you're a unit, if you're a government, like or a school or a library, obviously you don't have a mission statement. It's pretty self-explanatory. So if you're a organization, either an arts organization or history organization, or a business organization, you need to upload your mission statement. If you're if you are a government or school, then you need to there's a document exemption template. What you do is you download this template to your desktop or wherever, and then you upload the template. And the template just says that this document is not applicable to us. Next thing is a list of your organization's board of directors. Everybody's got to do that. If you're a government, then you put then you put a roster of your governing body or leadership. You can attach up to 5 materials about your organization and/or project. If you're an arts organization, provide the resume and qualifications of your historian that we talked about, which you're required to employ. So you can do up to 5. You can pretty much put anything you want there that you think would be helpful. And all applicants complete a hard copy of the certification page. Like I said, you either have to hand deliver it by November 18th at 5 o'clock, or it needs to be postmarked on or before then. And to download the certification page, you download it here. You click on that, you download it, you print it out, you sign it in blue ink, and you return it to us. And then it'll take you, once you do all that, it'll take you to a page to submit your application. Let me just go back to the guidelines. Okay. Guidelines. Payments. We announce the payments by letter. You receive. So how it works is we're doing everything pretty early this year, earlier than years past. So you will know in sometime in December about your grant award. The payments are made. So now that if you're familiar with LAP, then and actually history this year too, we did this as well. Your payments will be in 3 installments. Your first installment will be 75% of the amount that's awarded from the state. So that will be after you sign the contract. So we'll be sending out the contracts in December. You return them. You'll get your first 75% of the state funds. And then, so how it works is the county does not approve its budget until June. So we put in, make a request for funds, county funds for this grant. They generally, the freeholder board and the county executive are very gracious, and we generally are able to get what we ask for. But if for some reason, there's some kind of emergency, or for some reason they have to use those funds for something else, then there won't be county funds. But we haven't had that. We haven't had that situation yet, and I don't think we will. So, so I explained here about the county budget. So after the county budget is passed in June, we'll send you a voucher for the amount that you'll receive from the county. we'll give you, when we give you your, when we send out your award letter, there'll be a range in there. Like you'll receive between X amount and X amount from the county. It's because we ask for a range from the freeholders. So we ask like a low amount and a high amount. And we've been lucky, we've been getting the high amount. So you'll know about that in June. I know it sounds like a little confusing. If you have questions about that, you can ask me. And then your third payment of the final 25% of the state amount, you will receive after we receive your final report. And like I say here, it will be due on or around December 30th, 2020. I got to change that. My apologies. And then it talks about the final report. We don't really need to go through that now. It's just basically, you'll detail your finances and how the project went, tell about who participates. Now, this is important, actually. You must keep records of your number of people who serve by your programming, including the number of underserved residents, culturally diverse communities, persons with physical or developmental disability challenges, senior citizens, and the number of artists served participating in the program. So it's important that the state asks us for these numbers, so we ask that you keep these numbers. That is it for the guidelines and the application. Do any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions. You can take yourself off mute and ask.
Hey, Joe, it's Tim.
Hey, Tim.
So I just so I understand, this historian stuff, it's not dependent on the program. JCTC is obviously an arts organization. So
right.
we have to hire a historian no matter what.
Yeah. So, you have been, I assume you've been doing you've been receiving a history grant. Yeah. So you're an arts organization. You can only apply for the program support grant, and 20% of the grant you have to use to employ the services of a historian to make sure that your programming is historically accurate.
For the program support grant.
Yeah, for program support.
Okay. And so the other thing is that 20% of the grant has to be paid to the historian. Yeah.
20%. Yeah, 20% has to be used. 20% of it has to be used to employ the services of a historian, like whatever payment, Yeah, I don't know if you're paying the historian directly or you're paying an institution. That's between you and the institution or you and the historian. But yes, 20%.
The other thing is that the high number is 7,000, but usually we get a reduced amount. But so what figure would that be? Would it be 20% of the ask?
No, it's 20% of what you receive. So if you request 7,000 and you get 6,000, 20% of you would have to spend 20% of the 6,000.
In the budget, how do we make that work?
Well, like I said, in the budget you have to account for the fact that you may not be getting, you have to be able to do the project with the funds you get. So you might, we try to, no, I don't think anybody has ever, the first year of this grant, everybody received what they asked for, but, it all depends on the demand. So if we get 50 applications and they're all meritorious, then obviously if everyone requests $7,000, not everybody's going to be able to, not everyone's going to be able to get $7,000, not everybody's going to get $7,000. So you have to be able to either do the project as it's in your budget, or if you have to, we were going to do 3 performances, but we only have money for 2 performances, then you have to come talk to us about that.
And one of the questions you said, and thank you for that, but the thing you said that between the historian or the institution, we could actually work with
yes.
like a university and have their, and so, and then.
Yeah, exactly. Like St. Peter's or NJCU or Hudson County Community College or whomever.
And if we use their facilities, would that count towards this historian business, or the 20%, or is it more specific than that?
Well, I guess I would say consult with us on that. I'm not sure,
Understood. Okay.
I'm not sure, I guess if you're using, their machine, I guess it would go towards the 20%, but I guess I would ask you to consult with us about it.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Happy to answer any and all questions.
Hi, Joe.
Hey.
This is Daisy DeCoster from St. Peter's University. I'm the library director.
Yeah, hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm actually wondering if we're eligible, or where we fit in here, and if we're eligible. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, but we're a Institute of Higher Ed. We're not just history-oriented. We have a history major. We have history interns. We do have archives.
Right, so you would be applying for a program support grant.
Right, but which category will we pick once we get in there?
You mean in the application itself?
Yeah, because we're not a government library.
Yeah, let me see. Let me see if it's confusing, then we can hold on one second. Let me go.
And if you want to email me after tonight,
no, I'm curious myself. Hold on.
It's probably been a long day.
It has been, but that's fine. Let me just see what it looks like on the application. You can see the application now?
I can't on my screen, but it's okay. I have it linked somewhere.
Let me see. My apologies, everybody. Okay. I should be able to see it. Free application. So, 1 full year, yes. Has your organization been in existence for 1 full year? Has yours been incorporated? Approved by an SC. Yeah, you have been in existence for 1 full year as of 1/19. You're incorporated in the state of New Jersey and you're a nonprofit, so you qualify. I don't know if it's confusing the application. It says in the guidelines.
I thought we had to choose between arts, history, or government or business. Maybe
You are a no. It also mentions. Hold on. It's on page. I got the guidelines here. Units of government. Yeah, it doesn't really address you, but you can definitely apply. I guess I should. I guess I need to add something in here, but no, you're definitely We've never had a university apply. But it should be B. It should include B, but you're not a unit of government, but you are B. I got to make that more clear. But yes, you can apply. You can apply.
We are a library, so in this case, do you think we should just go for I think D was where libraries fell.
Yeah. And I'll clarify. I can.
And it is kind of a library project we want to do, so I think for you guys it would make.
Yep.
And a sense when you see it. Okay.
Yep. I'm sorry for that confusion.
Hey, no worries. I'm just glad that I didn't sit through this and we don't qualify.
Yeah. No, you qualify. Sorry about that. Any other questions? No, and if you guys have if you get my emails, which all of you probably do, my office number and my cell and my email are there. So if you have questions, you don't feel like asking them here, feel free to give me a holler whenever. I'm happy to try to answer. When you're going through the application, if you have questions. But I would say this, and it's in the application. Let me see if I could let me see. I just always ask. Let's see. Basically, you'll see in the application. If you have application questions, feel free, by all means, to give questions about the actual application. Feel free to give me a call. If there's technical issues like something that's glitchy, you can get in touch with Zoom Grants, and there's 3 ways to do it, and you can do it right from inside the application. You can email them or you can call them, and the phone number's in there about 15 different times. So it's also and if you have trouble, you shouldn't have any trouble getting in touch with them. They're very responsive. But if for some reason you do, just give me a call. And if you send them an email, I get copies of it, and I know when they respond to you. So they're very responsive. You shouldn't have too many problems. But if you do, just let us know. Any other questions before we sign off for the evening? If not, I will. I'll sign off, and I thank everyone for taking the time. I hope it was useful, and like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch.
John,
all right?
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.